Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for attending another one of our podcasts. We're well into the 20s now, so we've got many different experts who have come and spoken to us about various aspects of life. We don't leave this only to the investment world. We've got a very interesting topic today, and that's cybersecurity. And we have Roman Zubrytsky with us, who we're working with to improve our systems and make our platform as safe as it possibly can. We're in the business of wiring money to different investment programs, and we've had it happen several, we'll talk about this later, Roman, but several times where something changes at the last second and doesn't seem right. And we check with ourselves and only to find out indeed someone was watching our emails and trying to jump in there. So yeah, we try to do our best to be secure. Hopefully, we're going to learn a few more things today from Roman. And Roman, I'm going to pass it over to you, and maybe you could just give a little bit of background on yourself first.
Yes, no, definitely, David. Thank you very much for inviting me to the podcast. It's very exciting. I've been in IT for about 30 years now. I run the MSP business. MSP stands for Managed Service Provider, and that's for about 20 years. And I lead a team of IT professionals to support our clients' IT infrastructure. So the information security has always been the integral part of our work. But for the last 5 years, probably, it is actually a central role. It plays a central role in IT infrastructure, especially the design and maintenance. So I'm excited to talk about cybersecurity today.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Well, I'll just start out with a bit of a program that we've put together here, and with your help. So, how do people approach cybersecurity nowadays, individuals and companies?
Actually, that's a very interesting question. So I find that many people approach cybersecurity, well, similar to as they approach driving. So they know that driving is inherently dangerous. There are a number of accidents happen like every day. Yet we all, get into the car and on a daily basis and drive around. We believe that we're good drivers. We obey the law, drive with reasonable speed most of the time, stay away from dangerous drivers. So we believe the chance of us getting in an accident is pretty small. And if we are in the wrong place at the wrong time, then we have insurance that potentially should help us to get through this. And so I think people approach cybersecurity the same way. So they know there's a danger out there. They see it on the news. They know they can get bad emails, can get dangerous websites. So they say they use common sense. They're careful when reading emails or connecting, getting attachments. They don't go to bad websites. So they believe the chance of cybersecurity incident happening to them is pretty low. And in case something happens, hopefully they have insurance and potentially they can help them. So the reality is that cybersecurity incident is not an accident. And that's the biggest difference, which kind of hard to understand or grasp. But the cybersecurity criminals are out there to get their money. So they're hunting for money. They basically like resemble actively seeking out their prey. So the cybersecurity is not an accident. And I think this is the biggest difference. That's what we're trying to bring to people.
Okay. And maybe cyber criminals, as they're sometimes called, like how do they operate? Maybe just go over some of the approaches they might use, and asking for money and breaking in, and things that we should be aware of, like telltale signs to red flag and don't click on a link. Tell us some things we should know.
Well, the cyber criminals, they're basically like two major approaches. One, they ask for money. So that just usually comes as an email. They basically send an email and ask for the money. So that could be very different. That we're getting into the phishing emails. It could be as simple as this person gets an email from their supposedly boss or manager, which they would ask, basically they would be asked for the gift cards, Apple gift cards. The boss would say, hey, I'm at the conference, and the response is great. I'd like to reward the participants with the gifts. Please send it to me. Or they would say, hey, we're organizing the party. Would like to reward our employees, and they would love to this to be a surprise. So please keep it private. So essentially, they're gaining the trust of the person and making them do something they're not supposed to by gaining the trust. And that's what the phishing scams are. Now, and we've all heard about this on the news. There's a term for this as a gift card scam. Yet, unfortunately, people fall for it over and over again. And I see actually younger generation, like younger people, tend to be more susceptible to these scams. Now we go a little bit further, and then there are more complex emails. Then there would be some sort of an invoice it would be sent to the accounting department, and sometimes there's a random invoice from random companies that are easy to spot. Sometimes the email comes in with a fake trail of correspondence that goes about services and pay and the cost of, and it can go like 4 or 5 emails down, and then at the end it goes, hey, there's an invoice, please look at the emails below and please submit the payment. So these approaches essentially require the criminals to do a lot of research, that they use the social media and other publicly available information to do this. Now, the most serious scenarios, and again, that's from a real world experience, was that I'd like to share was actually with a corporation that was preparing to acquire a business, and they were in negotiation for a while, and they were basically very close to the agreement. And somebody in the accounting department receives an email referring to this agreement, saying, "Hey, good news! We got an agreement in place. We're pretty much ready." And now the next step would be to wire the first payment for the company. And the information was such believable that unfortunately the money went through, and most of them haven't been recovered.
Yeah, I think I might even know the company, but we're leaving everybody innocent and unnamed here. But I heard a very similar story from another client, and the accounting department thinks they're actually doing their job and pushing things along. No, they didn't have the proper systems in place to verify, and you just have to assume every request for money is fraudulent, is the way we look at it in our business. And even some of these emails that come in, Roman, like they're so obvious, some of them, like spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes. There's no way anybody who actually would read them carefully would ever click on. Tell me what happens if you do unsuspectingly, they see something and it looks legit and you click on links or even PDFs. So what can that then trigger within the system?
So the phishing email, these are different email. They look for different information. Very common approach now is to fish for the credentials. Now, a lot of people now use either Google or Microsoft Office 365. Knowing the credentials, if the cyber criminals get their credentials, get into a lot of they can collect a lot of information, and they can break into the system. Now, the data is also in the cloud, and these credentials are linked to the cloud storage. Even with MFA, which is multi-factor authentication, now the criminals know how to go around that MFA. So often people get requests to enter their credentials in order to read the documents. It's nothing but the way for criminals to get their credentials, get into account, and from there get into the system. Often, if the criminals get the credential, often they keep quiet. They look for the information in the mailbox. They look for the emails. They collect information, and they may stay there for weeks until they find some interesting information they would. So I'd like to get into the common scenarios of the break-in, and if that's okay,
Yeah, go for
I
it.
think those are they can be done differently, but the phases are pretty much the same, and they would help us understanding the phases can help us to protect the environment. So where the initial phase is to break into the system, they could be done through the email, it could be done through the vulnerabilities that are potentially open and not patched, like through the router or firewall. They could be done through a malware that comes through email, and the malware essentially is a program that allows somebody to get into the system and start exploring. And usually, once the criminals are in the system and they don't see anything preventing them from moving around, they don't see any danger in a way, they'll spend quite a bit of time looking for data, looking for information. Their goal is essentially find the valuable information that they can do something about and extract that information. The term is data exfiltration, essentially, but they collect the information and then upload it into the cloud, into their storage. And that can take a while, depending on how comfortable they feel. If they feel comfortable in the system, they can spend months looking around, digging deep. Once they realize that they've done everything they need to, they look for backups, because they know if they delete the backups on the system, they'll have a higher chance of getting the ransom. So they go after the backup, and any backup they can delete, they delete the backup. Now, if they feel they cannot delete the backup, they do everything possible that the backups that are supposed to run, say even if in the cloud, they don't run. And that, again, can take a month or so, or maybe 2 months. As long as they're comfortable, they'll stay in the system. So once they get the data, and once they feel that there is no way to recover the data, the final step is the encryption of all the computers and servers and data, basically. So up until that time, still do something about, I mean, the data is already in the cloud, but up until that time, we could still fight with the criminals. Now, once everything's encrypted, that's basically where they reveal themselves. And that means they've done everything they wanted to. And just revealing themselves basically by encrypting all the data in the computers. And that's where you see the screen where it says your computer's encrypted. Here's how you have to give us the money, the ransom.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's essentially that's where the new phase begins, and that's incident response. So basically by then the criminals got the data, and they are asking for the ransom. So they know even if they don't get the ransom, they can do something with data. What can they do? They're looking for the data they can sell, whether to sell it to competitors or to personally identifiable data to other criminals that would be used for a number of ways to gain the money. So basically, they could potentially use the personal data to apply for the loans, get the money from the bank. So there are many ways, but that's essentially they're after the money. Okay, so after everybody basically realizes that there was an incident, there's another long process involved. And it usually starts with insurance, provided the business had an insurance. So the insurance usually requests for the specialized companies to come in and to do assessment, do the security check, essentially, see what had happened, whether they're still in the system somehow watching. And that usually takes some time, and it's extremely expensive. So really, not only cyber criminals here that are making money, unfortunately, these costly services. I have to say this is something I learned. I was very surprised. So there are even companies that are specializing in delivering the money to the cyber criminals, delivering the ransom to the cyber criminals. And also, these are very expensive services. So hopefully, of course, of course, the recommendation is not to pay ransom. The company has to assess essentially what they can do, how to recover data. And there are, again, from my experience, that there are ways to recover even the backups, even if they're deleted, that data can be recovered through certain services. Again, they're all very expensive services. So now, then the companies have to deal with the reputational loss. They have to connect with vendors, with customers. They have to basically let them know what happened, and have to somehow provide information so that none of the intellectual property or any information related to the businesses they work with has been leaked. And if has been, they have to work with that. Now, the employees as well, their personal information can also be leaked out. And so they have to protect employees as well through, and there are ways, the protection services now they can subscribe to, essentially to, but that's another big portion of it. And we hear about this in the news as well. What I also would like to mention, I think that usually that information doesn't go to news, doesn't make news. But what I've found through my experience, the psychological effects of these cybersecurity incidents, like on the individuals they're involved, they're sometimes devastating. Like for the first day, and in these effects, the amount of stress could go for weeks. Like first days, I saw the people really they couldn't believe, they were confused, they couldn't make any decisions, and the amount of stress that they had to go through because of the uncertainty, the anxiety that um, they have to go through again for weeks is it's very difficult to bear. So that's a very high cost.
Are these cyber criminals? Are they ever located? Do they ever get caught?
That's we hear on the news. I hear, like, I'm subscribed to the essentially the security podcast. I got daily updates, and I hear the news that there was a group that was caught, or somebody in another country got extradited because of apparently they're in a cyber. These are very small numbers compared to the industry. Now, I just pulled the interesting information. In 2025, the cybercrime is expected to cause 10.5 trillion of damage. So it's an unbelievable numbers. There are thousands of people involved in that. I hear there are huge call centers in Asia operating linked to the businesses that are involved in cybercrimes. But even in Canada, for example, it was an accident related to the money wired to the Canadian bank, and it was unfortunately through a different method where thieves injected themselves in the conversation. It was related to the real estate transaction, and they injected themselves, and they paused, and they essentially were able to bypass the seller, and they provided the bank information in Canada. Not able, like the police was not able to trace the money. So
Amazing.
they're very difficult to catch.
Okay. So how can an organization protect itself?
So with regards to the protections, I know you've subscribed to the user awareness program, and so this is how we met. I think this is the crucial part of the protection. The user awareness program, basically, that allows people to be aware of what's happening out there, is extremely important. So it's the people eventually that are opening attachments or answering the email or going and buying these cards or wiring, making the wire payments. So there's a lot of responsibility is on people, and having them going through the training, understanding the dangers and specifics of it, and also on a regular basis, on a weekly basis or semi-weekly, letting them know in a 1 or 2 minute kind of short videos that are easy to consume, that hey, that's what's happening. You give them a little bit of information about different types of dangers. It makes a huge difference.
Sorry, carry on.
No, I was going to go to some technical details, but if you like to discuss that.
No, go ahead. I'd like that.
Okay, so that's the human portion. The IT, the side that we're working on, it has multiple components. We call it stack. And essentially, we stack all these tools together, and they can be used together. They are ideally the best together, but they can also be used separately. And I can go through several of these tools that basically, because they're approaching the system, the components of the system in a different way. So when it comes to email, there are a couple of components that we use to protect the email. So first of all, we put additional filters. These filters analyze the email and they try to filter out all the spam and phish ahead of time. Now they're not perfect. The emails still come through, but they try to filter out the majority of it. Now, when the email comes in, we use additional tools like DNS filters. So DNS filter is something that would look at how we use internet and protect us from connecting to the wrong websites. Or say, even if we click on the link, it would analyze that link and would not allow us to go to that site. Again, based on all the information that service is collected and aware. Now, from there, we go to the computer. How do we protect the computer? We put a security software. The security software used to be called antivirus. They operate on completely different mechanisms now. They used to be called, now they're called EDR, Emergency Detection and Response. And that's a great tool. Again, sometimes referred to antivirus, but the best approach is to run what we allow to run. So essentially, there's tools on the computer that only allow programs to run that we designate to run. So, and nothing else will be allowed to run on the computer. That would protect anybody. That would protect essentially for any malware that potentially can get to your computer, but it just won't be allowed to run. Now, on the network side, we have firewall. Essentially, that's like a router, but it's called firewall. It has all the protection mechanisms to not allow anybody outside of the network into the network. These are usually subscription services, but they operate essentially. This is your door to the outside world, and we need to guide that door. From there, we go to patching. We run operating systems on the computer. We run different programs. They constantly get updates. Apparently, the vulnerabilities are discovered, so we need to be on top of patching. We need to apply the patching as soon or close to when they're released, so the hardware protected. An additional approach is that we need to know how our systems are doing. Are they sick technically? So are there vulnerabilities there we don't know about? So we use vulnerability scanning again on a monthly basis. The tool goes and scans computers, printers, phones, anything on the network, comes up with a report. Here's the vulnerabilities potentially that we need to address. We have to address them because that's how the hackers get in. They exploit vulnerabilities, and they know about all the vulnerabilities they are. So, and if that was not enough, and we know about backup. Backup is separate. So we have a backup. We can have the backup on site. We also have to have a backup in the cloud. And it's not only about the data on the servers, it's your backup of the email system as well. It's because, say, if you have a Microsoft 365 email, or maybe use SharePoint or OneDrive, they're not being backed up. Microsoft does not say if you delete the email, it's going to get deleted in 30 days. So you do need to have a backup of even Microsoft 365. And these are great protection tools. And there's one on top of that. There's a lot of tools. There's one on top. And this tool, very important because it actually monitors your system, including Office 365, what's happening on Office 365 constantly by getting the logs from the systems and analyzing them in real time. And when something happens, it acts either with automated processes or there's a security operation center SOC operating 24/7 to react to the incidents. And I'll give you an example. Office 365. Say somebody got an email and accidentally entered their credentials. I have just recently, actually, I've talked to a person, and she says she never gave the credentials. She honestly believes it never happened. Somehow, though, somehow in the back end, they see that her credentials, her account was accessed from multiple different places in the world simultaneously. So that means her credentials got leaked. And not only her credentials, because she had an MFA. So we think MFA is secure. It is secure most of the time. But the cyber criminals, what they do, they mimic, they actually, they give you the website where you think you're logging into Microsoft 365, yet you're logging into their system. And they use the information, and then at the same time, they log into Microsoft 365 to your account. They get session ID, and with that, they can essentially get access to your account. But anyway, what happens is you accidentally gave that information to the cyber criminals. Then they take the information and log into Microsoft 365. Now that system detects this, the somebody logged in from a place that is not normal. It automatically locks the account and requests the password change. So automatically protects you right away. That's the greatest.
This has been great, Roman. What about operating systems? Can you say which one might be better, Microsoft or Google or any others that tend to have better backups and better cyber protection? Okay, that's helpful. One thing I do, and maybe tell me if there's anything else I could be doing over and above this, when I start reading an email, like right away, if someone's asking me for money, I'm like, okay, this is probably not true, to be fair or nice. And I look a little bit, and I always, just about every time, I find a spelling mistake or grammar. And so instead of clicking on anything other than just opening it so far, and by the way, answer me later if there's a risk in even opening an email, let alone getting into links and PDFs. I forward it to our IT person, and then he must open it on some other system that's not going to infect his. And 9 times out of 10, he writes back, yeah, that's spam, ignore, delete. And so that's how we operate. Is that the right way? Is there more that we could be doing? Should I even be opening these to begin with when pretty much on the surface I can tell they look to be suspicious if they're asking me for money? We do, yes. They are. Okay. Okay, got it. Well, let's finish up with one final question. With artificial intelligence, and right now, who knows, my voice could be being recorded and every intonation, and I've maybe said enough magic words that then someone could then, go and write a book with the words I've written or said, or get in through security channels. How are we going to combat and fight against AI and everything that they're trying to recreate about us so that we can carry on? Is there going to be more than two-step authentication in the future? Like, what else do you see on the horizon? Well, this has been very interesting for me, and I've learned a few things, and I hope others who listen will also learn something. And Roman, please tell everybody how they can get a hold of you to help out with what you do for people. That's great, Roman. Well, hopefully people pay attention to that. We'll make sure we put your credentials on the front end of this so people who don't listen all the way will hopefully look out for you. We've got all of our staff going through all the videos and the school that you're putting us through. And so we're just about finished that. That's challenging to get some people going, including yours truly. So we're going to make our way through that. Just everybody, just every email you get, even if it looks like from your best friend, just assume that it's suspicious, and especially if it's asking you for money, just right away assume that it's false. We've heard of so many stories. We've heard a few today, but we've heard so many stories about people who fall prey to this. And I guess our pride gets in the way most of the time, but hopefully we can step aside of that and things will work out better. So, Roman, thank you very much for your time today.